Central Texas. Welcome to Community Connections. I'm Phyllis Jones, your host for this morning. And this morning we have a guest. I haven't talked to him before. I haven't met him before either. I read about him, but a friend told me about him, so I'm like, he's got to come on. It's Dr. Antonio Webb, and he's going to talk to us about COVID. And why I think the conversation with him about COVID is because he looks like us. He's a melanated person. And, we talk to us quite differently. And we say things to us that we can comfortably say and nobody else can. So this morning, we're going to talk about COVID. And I hope he can tell us why all of a sudden the numbers are kind of changed and our African-American men are catching it more. I don't understand that. But good morning, Dr. Webb. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is exciting. I'm like, yes, cool. Okay. Okay, before you dealt with the Ebola virus, is that right?
Well, I was actually in Liberia right before the Ebola outbreak in 2014. I was just there, incidentally, just doing some surgery and mission work, and then we heard about the Ebola outbreak while we were there. So I was there right as the outbreak first started, and once I got back, there were several physicians that I worked with that passed away from Ebola.
Oh, wow. So was that interesting?
It was very eye-opening, and it was, I've never been to a more impoverished place in my life. It was eye-opening to see, the lack of medical supplies, resources, infrastructure to, handle a disease like that. And, it's, comparing that to COVID, COVID is on a more big global kind of scale and has, killed more people than the Ebola virus, but that was still devastating to their country at that time.
Right. So going up to now, how did you become, interested in really diving into COVID? What got you where you are with COVID? As far as
I would say it's my social media following. I have an interest in videography and cinematography through my YouTube page, and just being an African American male in a field. My specialty is orthopedic spine surgery.
Right.
That is 1.5% of orthopedic surgeons are African American. I wanted to be the face and be a voice for people that look like me, that come from similar communities, because I think it's important that patients be treated by providers that they can relate to and that look like them. So just being on my social media following and kind of a social media kind of guru, I just felt it was my kind of duty to just educate patients on certain things that need to be addressed.
And COVID is one of our enemies out there that we need to hear from us about COVID. Because as a people, okay, we endured through the syphilis nightmare, and then we endured through the AIDS nightmare, and we've always been considered, we've always been the guinea pigs, I'll say, the human part of the guinea pigs. It seemed like we came after monkeys and rats as far as being, treated. So when we heard about COVID, first of all, I say when we heard about COVID, we really didn't think about it much because it was people we didn't know and never saw. So I think with our community, if it's people we never know, never seen, it's not that we don't care about it. We don't get the alertness part right yet. But then when we do hear the alertness of, like I say, COVID, we didn't hear from anybody that looked like us. And as we know, when we don't hear coming from anybody like us, we tend to not believe it. Go ahead.
No, I was saying that's exactly true. There's been multiple studies that show that outcomes and patient adherence to recommendations, medications, and for me as a surgeon, surgery recommendations based off the skin color of the provider that's treating them. So patients do better when they're treated by providers who look like them. And, like you said, this disparity went back even further than the 1930s during the Tuskegee trials, going back to the 1800s, where they were sterilizing women of color without sometimes anesthesia, just because they didn't think that black women had the same pain level as other kind of races. So this is a problem that's stemmed back way far back from this pandemic.
So about the pandemic, Um, okay, why are you might not even know the answer to it, but I just want to know. And when I put you there on Facebook that you were coming, boy, did I have a lot of. I had some questions that we kind of heard the answer to, but they need to hear from you. And I'm like, I understand that. That's fine. But all of a sudden now, our African American men numbers are high. What happened?
You said the African American numbers are high.
The African American male numbers have went up. Why? What happened?
Well, I think there's a lot more kind of conversation around it. I'm in a group with a group of 20 physicians who are all black physicians, and we have a goal is just to put out information surrounding the vaccine, a lot of the mistrust, a lot of the misconception, this conspiracy theories to try to hopefully alleviate a lot of people's fears. There's been several studies that have shown that African Americans are less likely to receive the vaccine, and that's due to a lot of different causes and reasons why, but I think there's just more conversation around it, and people are just coming around to the fact that, no one has died from the COVID vaccine, but over 400,000 people have died from COVID. So right. I think it's important to address this issue kind of head on, and that's exactly what me and a lot of my colleagues have been trying to do.
And when we hear about COVID, we hear about the 14 days, but that's all we hear about, the 14 days. But it's a guy that I know that's in the hospital. He's been in there for 42 days. So we're like, and then his kidneys have failed. So that it was hard to wrap our head around 14 days. And to know that he's been in there for, over 40 days with COVID. We didn't know that. We didn't know anything about that.
Well, every patient is different. The scary part about COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 is that you don't know how your body's going to respond to it. There's been healthy people who work out all the time, who never been sick before, and they end up in the ventilator on the hospital, which is the breathing machine, and then they have multi-organ failure and all other types of problems. And then you have people that, majority of people kind of bounce back fairly quickly from, after contracting COVID, but you just don't know how your body's going to respond to it. And that's a problem that in the African American community, when we've been disproportionately affected by this due to a lot of different things, including higher numbers of comorbidities like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, kidney disease, heart disease. All those things impair and impact your body's ability to fight off an infection. So, yes, if a patient has renal disease, which is kidney disease, or heart disease, those patients may have a harder time fighting off the virus and may end up in the ICU compared to someone else like myself who doesn't have any medical problems. I just don't know how my body's going to respond to it if I do get COVID-19.
Okay, also with that, I thought, well, a lot of us thought, I suppose, that it was respiratory, but we say kidneys, how did they get there? And that's because they have there's something wrong with their kidneys already? Is that why then? Can it go to other parts of your body?
Yes, it can be both. So when the virus kind of gets into your body, yes, it affects the cells kind of in the lining of your lungs. And then, the virus can affect any portion of your body. When once part of your body, like your lungs or your heart, shuts down, then your kidneys have to work harder, and then your lungs have to work harder. So it can affect various parts of your body, and depending on what medical problems you have or what underlying conditions will dictate how well or how efficiently your body's able to handle that response.
Okay, other than wearing the mask, the N95 or KN95, other than those two masks, and some of us wear gloves, what else are we supposed to do? And hand sanitizer. So out of those three, is there anything else that we should be doing?
Yeah, everybody talks about social distancing, and I think that's very important.
Right.
There's been several studies looking at vitamin D. So, that's one thing that I tell all my patients. Most people are vitamin D deficient and don't realize it. Your immune system and your body needs vitamin D to be able to fight off infection. The receptors that are on the white blood cells that fight off infection, they have receptors for vitamin D. So if you're deficient in vitamin D, those white blood cells aren't able to do their job efficiently, and they clog up your organs, and they can stick around and cause other problems. So I would suggest vitamin D. There's been studies looking at melatonin, the medication that helps you go to sleep at night.
Right.
Both of the medications are kind of over-the-counter and fairly cheap that they have been shown to reduce the severity of the disease as well as reduce mortality and morbidity if you do contract COVID-19. So, yes, washing your hands, social distancing, taking care of yourself in terms of your physical, your mental, just going out on walks, staying physically active, all those things, you want to basically prepare your body so that you can give, your body's the best chance to fight off that infection or virus once you do get it.
Wow. And those that get it and don't know or their body asymptomatic, how is that? Is it because their bodies are built differently also?
No, most people are asymptomatic and don't know it. And this is, that's why they call it the novel virus. We've never seen a virus like this. Other viruses like the Ebola virus, and the reason why that didn't kind of get to a global scale as this is because the patients who have Ebola, they had very obvious symptoms that you can tell right away when someone has Ebola virus. So those patients were kind of quarantined or sent off to hospitals to kind of isolate. Well, patients who have COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2, sometimes you don't have any symptoms whatsoever. So you can be in a grocery store and there's 10 people in there who have SARS-CoV-2, you would never know. So that's the hard part. That's why it's so easily transmitted, is that the asymptomatic transfer of this virus is, that's a problem. That's something that, that's the reason why it's such to a global and national and worldwide kind of a scale that it is now.
Okay, so with what's confusing also is we hear the CDC say one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say I do, and a lot of us do. Work for the school districts in the state of Texas, right? And
yep.
But their rules aren't the CDC rules. So are companies and businesses allowed to come? I'll tell it which so they better understand it. Like our district I work in, they'll tell us if we feel better, if we have COVID, yes. And if after the 7th day, if we feel good, we can come back to work.
Mm.
And we were like, wait a minute, hold on. That's not what we hear over there. It says the whole 14 days. But we try, what's this if you feel better? I could have felt better the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's been a lot of misinformation. There's been a lot of people that are providing recommendations and, different advice that doesn't really kind of align with other states and federal policies. I would, obviously you have to abide by whatever kind of regulation or agency that's kind of over you at that time. But, I think there should be conversations with healthcare providers who can provide input. There's a lot of information that is based off of politics now, where it shouldn't be. I mean, we should rely on the science and the science behind this. And hopefully the new administration now, that's kind of his whole kind of philosophy, is relying on science and not politics. And there's been a lot of controversy and kind of going back and forth with information because of the last administration, which, is very frustrating as a healthcare provider. Patients and the community are hearing various advice and recommendations from all various sources. So
it causes a nightmare.
Yes.
And it makes you either believe everything or not believe anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't leave you in the middle. You're like, okay, I'm not going to do any of this. Then wait a minute, hold up. I'm going to, it left us in a confusing light. Now, the new strand that we hear of, what the heck is it? Does it have a name, or is it just called the new strand?
Well, there's different variants of the SARS-CoV-2. And with any virus like the flu virus, it mutates every single year. Once it gets into your body, it replicates, which means there's more viral copies that are made of that virus. And That's how it kind of gets into your body and gets into your machinery and your cells, and then it replicates. Well, any virus that you become contracted with that virus is going to mutate or kind of change its genome, so that that's how it evades our immune system and evades various antibodies that are produced from the vaccines. Well, the current vaccines that are out, the Pfizer, Moderna, and there's Johnson and Johnson that just released their results this past week. Well, most experts think that these current vaccines are pretty effective against these strains, and I can't think of how many strains are out there, from the UK to South Africa to other countries that have all these different strains, but they're just different makeups of that virus.
And so we hear that you can catch it easier.
Yes, that's what they think. It's more transmittable, which means patients or the community can spread it easier because it's easier to evade the immune system. Your body hasn't recognized that particular aspect or that variant just yet until you become infected, and then you make antibodies, helper T cells, which help fight off infection to that new variant.
This sounds like a science fiction movie.
Yeah.
It does, because in those science fiction movies, something comes out, it starts up this, and then it mutates to something else.
Yeah, there's actually a couple movies on Amazon or on Netflix about this, but it takes me back to my immunology days in medical school.
Wow. Okay, the vaccines, right? Why are they so different? Like, why does one is two shots and one is one? What's the difference?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the current vaccines, the Pfizer and Moderna, these are really these vaccines have been found to be very efficacious in large clinical trials. So whenever we're providing recommendations or whenever I'm recommending a surgery or medication to a patient, I always have to look at the literature, and what you want to look at is kind of what's called level 1 evidence. These are the highest level trials. These are randomized, placebo-blind, double-blinded studies with 30,000, 40,000 patients in them. So in these trials, these two vaccines have been found to be very effective. The first dose, and then the second, your booster dose. And then after that, that's when they said that you're 95 or 94% effective. Well, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, they do have some trials that they're starting to do with two vaccines for Johnson & Johnson, but the one that's kind of hopefully will be here soon is the first dose, and they found that first dose to be very effective, just with that single dose. Right. It doesn't require the same level of like to be in the refrigerator for a certain temperature, and that's kind of hopefully that's some hope for us that more people can receive the vaccine with the Johnson & Johnson.
So how will we ever know? Science. How will science or doctors, however it goes, how will you know how long this vaccine is effective? How long is it? A year? Well, 2 years, or how long is it effective as far as how it goes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think most people are thinking about 8 to 9 months, but we just don't know yet. We have to, the individuals who receive the vaccine, I mean, it's just going to have to be some antibody tests that you take to see if you still have antibodies 8 to 9 months or even a year from now. So there's question about whether, just like the flu vaccine, whether this will be like an annual vaccine. And they're already talking about having some variations of the vaccine for these new strains. So that's already in development. So I would imagine maybe yearly or every other year that some type of vaccine will be needed, to fight off, this infection or prevent this virus from infecting you.
Okay, now I have a way out of bound question. It's not really out of bound. Kind of makes sense. Okay, little people, the little short kids, the little kids who get measles, mumps, and all those other things that they're supposed to get. Well, I don't want to say supposed to get, but they goes into their ages. And so their body's okay when they get measles, mumps, and all that because they can fight it off. Yet if we get it, we know it's like on terrible. When we get it, it's like, oh my God, a disaster because our bodies aren't Is they don't have we don't have whatever the little kids have, that immune part. We don't have any of that. We get measles, and tragedy happens to us. Is it the same with COVID? Because little kids, I mean, because they're not that they're not worried about them, but they don't get the vaccine, or the numbers aren't put on the little kids. It's on adults. So is it because they have something in their little bodies that we don't?
No, it's not that. It's just the studies, the level 1 studies from Pfizer and Moderna, they just didn't include children in their studies. So most of these studies were looking at individuals 16, 17, 18 and up. The Moderna trials have started to do some studies looking at younger children. I think they were from like 12 to 16, or maybe just a little bit younger than that. But we just don't have evidence on kind of young children. Right. And as you can imagine, comparing a 6-year-old or 7-year-old to someone that's 50 or 60, that 50 or 60-year-old is going to have more medical conditions, right, more likely to have high blood pressure, problems with their kidneys, maybe some heart disease, and these things place you at more risk. So your body's not able to fight off an infection or some type of virus as efficiently as a 6-year-old who doesn't have any medical problems and has a pretty robust immune system so far. So, there's a lot of things that come into play, but the short answer is that most of these trials have not included children in them to study it just yet.
Okay, before a vaccine or anything gets out where it's used, how many trials do they do? Or is there a number they have to do of trials, or is it just depends?
Well, there's different phases of the trials that most of these, the vaccines have to go through. So there's phase 1, where they kind of test it on animals. There's phase 2, where they test it on a smaller number of people. And then phase 3, kind of a larger number of individuals in the trial. So it's highly regulated, and it has to be kind of approved by a expert panel of, healthcare professional. So, this is something that, you just can't put a vaccine out. You have to show it that it's very effective, number one, and you have to show that it has a good safety profile, which both the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine have shown.
Okay, I'm going to go back to come up. All right, at previous times, as we know, like I said, we started out with, we've been the guinea pig people. Okay, so now that we have the Pfizer and Moderna, did they have to test across racial lines or cultural lines? Did they test that way? Have to test that way?
Yeah. So that's one thing that when I was actually looking at these trials myself, that's any article or new paper that comes out or science review that comes out. We critically analyze the literature and I just don't incorporate things into my practice or recommendations just because a paper comes out. I can break down that paper, critically analyze it, and if there's something that is like the follow-up, which was a concern for me in this study, the follow-ups are shorter than most studies that I would like to see. And then the racial kind of makeup of these patients, I believe in these trials they were around 10 to 20%. So there's a lot of African Americans and the kind of minorities that were in these trials, but they were definitely included.
Because we on the, I guess, laymen or non-medical people, whatever, those numbers we don't, those things we don't get to read. You know what I mean? We read that there's a trial, but we want to know, okay, was any of us in this trial? And we don't get that we don't get those answers. It doesn't come out to the public the way it should.
Yeah. Both of the trials, they did include African Americans. I specifically kind of looked at that to make sure, and I think if I remember correctly, it's about 10 to 20%.
Okay. All right. Okay. That sounds good. That information needs to get out, though. I mean, just.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we need to, I guess I want to call it, break the nerves of some people. Because on my Facebook page, I mean, I hear, no, I'm not taking it. Well, you go first. What happened with you? You hear that, and it's gauging whether some people are going to actually go.
Yeah, and that's quite common. That something that I've heard. I was doing an interview yesterday with a news station in my hometown of Shreveport, Louisiana, and the reporter that interviewed me, she was hesitant. Her mother was hesitant. A lot of my patients are hesitant, but that's something just kind of we talked about, kind of going back, 1800s to the 1930s to the 70s, when they were, doing all these things on African Americans, as you described, as kind of guinea pigs. I mean, there's a cause for hesitation, but as a African American physician who grew up in a really challenging kind of environment and background, where I didn't know any black doctors, never saw a black doctor when I was growing up. That's the reason why I'm here, to just be that advocate and be that face. And I took the vaccine, the first dose. I'm getting my second dose tomorrow, and you have to look at the risk and benefits. No one has died from COVID-19 vaccine, but there have been 400,000 people that have died from SARS-CoV-2. So for me, it was a easy decision to make, and my job is not to tell you to take the vaccine.
Right.
My job is to educate you so that you can make the best informed decision for you and your family.
Wow. We did this, I guess my family did the same thing. My daughter works at Scott and White Hospital, and she got hers when they were giving all the doctors and everybody their first shot. And I did. I texted her. I'm like, how you feel? I text her about every hour for about 6 hours. I'm not getting on her nerves, but I'm her mother. I can get on her nerves. It's fine. It's legal.
Yeah.
But I texted her, and she was like, "I'll let you know if anything." I'm like, "Okay." Well, when she got her second one, she when she got her second one, she didn't text. She called. She goes, "Listen, you need to go get Tylenol, okay? Because I am the pain medication hater. I am the one. But she was telling me, you got to go do these. You got to get some Tylenol. You're gonna feel, you're not gonna feel very good that next day. She gave me all these things. I'm like, well, gee, where am I going? What is this? So she started explaining it to me, and I didn't hear her naturally, because after listening to that, I have to prepare my body beforehand. I was like, oh shoot, I'm not doing this, because I got to prepare myself. What's going to really happen to me? Because for me, that was the scary zone when she said the first time I was fine. The first shot, okay. The second one, when she's telling me what to prepare my body, that became, I'm like, wait, hold on, wait, stop. That made me not nervous or questioning, but like, wait a minute, hold up, a little hesitant, because I got to prepare my body for a shot. And I was like, oh shoot, she crazy. I was like, my daughter's crazy. She's lost her mind. She did this because she's on staff and she had to take the shot. But why is our body, what's with the second one versus the first one? Because nobody explains that. So what's the difference?
Yeah, so the first dose is just to introduce your body to some type of protein or the vaccine, so that your body can make antibodies. So the antibodies are what attacks any type of invaders that get into your body, whether it's a bacteria or some type of virus. Your body has to have antibodies, and then you have what's called T cells, and then these T cells will help your body fight off this infection. Well, most people for the first dose have some minor side effects, like arm soreness. The only thing I had was arm soreness the first time I got the vaccine. It felt like someone punched me in my arm really hard. And then some people may have some fatigue or a slight low-grade fever. Other patients, both Moderna and Pfizer, are reported to have most of their side effects from the second dose. And that's why she was mentioning taking some Tylenol, or some people mentioned antihistamines, because that second dose is a more robust response. Your body's already recognized that foreign invader. Then your body's going to kind of respond with a more robust kind of immune response, so that you can have more antibodies that are produced. So that's the reason why that second dose for most patients, and the population that receives that second dose, that's why they have a little bit more side effects than the first one. So, and then after that second dose, 10 to 14 days after that, that's when it's been found to be 94% effective.
Okay. Because I did the first one already. The first one I did. I did. I was brave enough to go. I had to drag my oldest daughter with me, because she's scared of needles. You say needles, she faints. So I was like, oh my gosh. So the first one was fine. My arm didn't hurt. I was good. I was good to go. But okay, for those who had COVID and need to go get the vaccine, they want to go get the vaccine, what's their waiting time? Like when they finish COVID, when can they get the vaccine?
Well, there's when you have kind of natural infection with SARS-CoV-2, your body does produce antibodies, and we think that these antibodies are, in terms of the length of duration or how long you'll be protective, we just don't know kind of the answer to that. But once you have once you have COVID-19, I think it's important to kind of go through the process and quarantine yourself and make sure you kind of recover from the virus. And then after that, I don't have an answer in terms of how long right after the virus that you should get the vaccine, but I do think it's important to receive that vaccine even if you have had COVID-19, just because we just don't think that the response, the antibodies that are produced from a natural infection is as robust as the vaccine can provide for your body.
Because see here, once again, we're getting, I live in Bell County, and I don't know if it's just Bell County, but I live in Bell County, so, so we hear information that way. But you have a number of places that are giving the vaccine. Well, some people are being told you have to wait 90 days after you have COVID to get the vaccine. And then one of my coworkers, she was told 15 days. And we were like, okay, it's got to be one or the other. It can't be 90, 15. There's got to be a number. We're thinking there's got to be one cohesive number of when, because, that's sending confusing information out. And, when you confuse people, then they turn away because it's a scary part. And since COVID is can be deadly, when you can get the vaccine, people really, really, really want to know, when can I get it? But giving out different numbers is not helping the community.
Yeah, that's exactly true. I would, there's various organizations that are kind of putting out information. I would go with the government, kind of CDC, World Health Organization, kind of what they're recommending. But yeah, I mean, I've heard kind of both numbers, and ultimately you have to do what's best for you and your family. The antibodies that you receive from a natural infection, most people think that you have some, a few months of kind of protection. So whether you get it 14 days after you contract COVID-19 or 90 days, I think the most important part is that you become vaccinated.
Right. Yes. Good. And, now going back to COVID. Well, we're still with COVID. Somebody else I know had COVID. He went through some nightmares before he got to be treated, right? Because first he went to the doctor. They told him he had an upper respiratory infection, and he wasn't sounding very good. So a lot of us sent him to, we sent him to another hospital, I'll put it that way. And they kept him, told him he did have COVID, and he stayed in the hospital until they got his breathing under control, which we understood that. But when he left with the portable shoulder oxygen thing, whatever you call it. I know it's not a tank, but the portable one you wear on your shoulders. He left with that, and they told him he needed to use it. And he found that he is still using it. I mean, he's been out of the hospital about 2 weeks, but he still has to use that. I mean, he's finding himself still shortness of breath. So is that can stay that long, or what? I mean, after effects like that can stay that long?
Yeah, we just don't know the long-term effects from a SARS-CoV-2 infection. I saw a few studies that show that most patients do have some residual type symptoms, even if they contracted it way back in March, April, when this first started, even to now. A lot of my friends who have been infected 6 months ago, 7 months ago, they'll still state that when they're exerting themselves, maybe an exercise or a fast little brisk walk, that they get shorter breath, kind of more than they would before, getting sick. So if you look at some of the CAT scans or the X-rays of patients who have COVID-19, your whole lung fields are infected, and this virus gets into your body and just goes rampant into the cells of the lungs and just kind of takes over.
So COVID is still a learning process, then, right?
Yes, that's why they call it a novel virus. It's something that we've never seen before.
So like I said, the things that we hear, like I said, the one guy I know, he's been in hospital for 40 days. I didn't think it lasted that long. And then, like a friend of mine, he leaves and he has a oxygen machine to, that he has to carry everywhere he goes. It's getting scarier and scarier because I guess the more further we're into it, the more things are happening that we never knew. We just assumed after 14 days, not that you were happy, fine to go, whatever, but we assumed after 14 days you were out of any critical areas. But now we're seeing that some people after those 14 days are still in a critical area.
Well, I wouldn't use the 14 days as a kind of steadfast kind of rule to go by.
Okay.
Everybody's situation is a little bit different. Some patients, some of my friends who've been infected, they just had some symptoms, very mild symptoms like allergy type symptoms for 2 days. Other patients, depending on their medical history and medical problems, they may have a harder time fighting off this virus. So the gentleman that's been in the hospital for 42 days, his body is probably taking a bigger hit or can't respond effectively as someone who doesn't have medical problems. So everybody's situation is a little bit different. 14 days is just a kind of broad, kind of arbitrary number that was kind of out there that patients kind of recovered during that time. But everybody's situation is a little bit different. Some patients are quicker than at 14 days, most patients. Other patients take a little bit longer to kind of bounce back.
So then it is, it is possible that you could go like today, I'll say today, you get tested, you find out you're positive. So it's possible that, and then, you're told, we're told you can't come back to work till after you test negative. But it could be possible for you to go back, let's say 15 days later, to be tested and you're still positive then. It's possible, right? Or is it?
Yeah, that's certainly the case, and there's a lot of question about the testing and whether, in terms of like false positives, false negatives. So you have to take that into account as well. I took a COVID, test a couple weeks ago, just a rapid test, and it was negative, but I could have certainly been positive. I mean, that's just a problem with the testing so far. That's kind of out there.
Yeah, I think I've been the most tested person on earth. Because every time somebody got sick, I'm like, oh, I gotta go.
Yeah. How many times have you been tested?
Like 4 times.
Okay.
Yeah, because when I went to the doctor the other day, they test you before they see you. The rapid test, yeah. So yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Each time I've been negative, I'm like, good. I just need to make sure because I'm running from COVID.
Excellent.
At a fast rate, fast rate. Okay, it affects people differently, not just males and not males and females, correct? Or is it not true?
Yeah, I don't think they saw any difference between males and females in the study. They did look at individuals over 65, 70 years old, and that's why those individuals are kind of at a higher priority of receiving the vaccine due to their kind of risk of severity of disease. So I haven't seen any differences between male and females. There are some studies looking at your blood type, saying that O positive or O blood type individuals are less at risk, but it's just a lot of speculation, and it's just time will tell. We just don't know a lot of these things just yet.
Does any medications affect COVID?
In terms
of how it spreads in your body?
Well, there's been multiple studies in terms of vitamin D and melatonin that we discussed, and you hear about zinc. The whole overall kind of gist is you want to give your body the best chance possible to fight off an infection. Well, if you have COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or asthma, or you're a smoker, or you're an alcohol drinker, you drink a lot of alcohol, well, those things place you at higher risk than someone who doesn't do those things. I get up and go to the gym at 4:45, 3 to 4 days a week. I don't have any medical problems. I try to stay physically fit, try to eat healthy. So my body, my immune system is stronger than someone who has cardiac disease and is on 7 medications and doesn't eat healthy, doesn't take their vitamins, no vitamin D, no vitamin C, no zinc. So that person is going to be at a higher, they're going to have a harder time fighting off the virus than I would. So you need to be able to treat your body like a temple, and then give your body the best chance that it can to fight off any type of invader.
So people, I'm being weird when not funny, but people need to treat their body like they treat their cars.
Exactly. Or their shoes. No one steps on your shoes, right? I grew up, if you stepped on somebody's Jordans, that was a fight.
Yes. Yes. So we need to follow the rules that we were, I guess, raised with. You are what you eat, but we also need to be careful of what we're eating and how we're eating it to keep our bodies fit for this fight, because it doesn't look like this fight's going to go away anytime soon.
Yep. Treat your body like a NFL, NBA athlete. These individuals, they work out constantly. They invest in themselves. I know that's kind of hard to do in certain communities, and we can have a discussion about social determinants of health, but you need to be able to give your body the best chance possible to fight off this virus if you were to get infected.
Well, if anybody's listening and you need to work out, come to my classroom. I work with special needs 4-year-olds. And and if you don't leave that classroom physically fit, I don't know why not, because we do, you name it, we do it.
It doesn't have to be a really kind of fancy workout. Just go out for a walk. Right. 30 minutes of walking per day, drink lots of water, wash your hands frequently, social distance, wear your mask. Those things are going to help protect you. And
the one thing that I see that is difficult for certain people to follow is the social distancing, because you'll see somebody who and you're walking up to them. To me, I do the fist bump thing because I learned that it was safer. But anyway, I'm not going to shake your hand. I'm not doing that. But some people will come up to you and say, "You know me," and want to give you a hug. And they need to understand that "you know me" doesn't work with COVID.
Yep. Yeah, this is something that's been going on for months, almost a year here in a few weeks. So a lot of people are becoming lackadaisical. People are tired, and that's understandably so. But we have to remain vigilant. The numbers are going up. These new strains are more transmittable. So we just have to be kind of very vigilant, and we will get through this. It's going to take some time.
Okay, can you stress the importance of the right mask? Because people are still wearing the pink, orange, blue, purple ones with the cute pictures on them. They're still wearing them. So can you talk about the importance of the mask, of the right mask? I'll put it that way. Yes.
Yeah. So most, I've seen studies kind of going back and forth. There's the study showing that surgical masks, the ones that we wear in the hospital, are just as effective as the N95. But there's been kind of conflicting kind of information that's out there. But the most important thing is that you protect yourself. So the mask is not for someone else, from yourself. It's actually to prevent any type of transmission when you talk, you breathe, you cough, from infecting someone else. So something that covers your mouth, and at some point I've heard that the CDC was recommending that you just put a cloth over your mouth, or some type of shirt, or any type of material. But for me, I think it's just important to have something over your mouth that covers your mouth at this point. I can understand that there's people in certain communities like mine, where I grew up, that may not have money to buy a mask. They have to wear whatever they can over their face.
Right.
You have to just protect yourself and protect others at this point. In terms of, hey, should you have an N95 or a very specialized mask? I worked with a surgeon who wore this gas-type mask that, when we went to the gas chamber when I was in the military, and his whole kind of thing, breathing apparatus over his head. And some people go to the extreme. That scares a lot of people, that, like, hey, I want that too, or I should have that too. But have something over your mouth. That's the most important thing.
Which, is it your mouth or just your mouth and nose?
Mouth and nose. Okay. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that.
Yeah, that's the battle too. And also the other part about the mask is some of these masks cause you not to be able to breathe. Right. Yeah. Because I have bronchitis. Well, I have seasonal bronchitis that Texas gave me when I got here. Texas decided I needed to have it. I didn't have it before, so I'm only blaming this part of the world. But
yeah, same thing when I'm out running or doing some exercise. Yeah, it is kind of hard to breathe in the mask. And if I'm doing a surgery at the hospital, sometimes I'm in this mask or in surgery, sometimes 4, 6, 7 hours at a time. So yeah, I can certainly understand people's concerns with that.
And okay, I'm the one that I wear gloves when I pump gas because I don't know because it's metal when people's hands touch it. Other than that, do we have to should we wear gloves or no?
I'm not a big fan of people wearing gloves, and the reason why I say that is this: whenever someone is out wearing gloves, they're touching their phone, they're touching their face, they're touching, their steering wheel, and then they go touch something else. So I don't see the importance of wearing gloves. I think it's more important just to wash your hands and make sure you don't touch your face.
Right.
The gloves, you can cross-contaminate a lot easier with gloves, but certainly, yes, if you're going to pump the gas, yes. I have, a set of gloves in my car. I just put the glove on before I touch it and then take it off. As soon as I get into my car, I sanitize my hands, or as soon as I pass by any sanitizing machines, I'm always using that sanitizer. So I think it's more important to be very vigilant and, just wash your hands and use the sanitizer versus wearing gloves. I'm not a big fan of people going around wearing gloves due to the fact of cross-contamination.
Yeah, I wear them when I pump gas because I'm like,
yeah, okay.
Everybody, I'm like, yeah, so I need gloves.
Yep.
And cause it's like, no, I didn't think about that until I saw a lady pumping gas and she put on gloves. I'm like, that's right, she's smart. I was like, okay, I need to do that. Is there any other information that we as a people need to know that we don't know, or that we are not, like you just said about the melatonin and vitamin D? I know we all heard about the vitamin D, but we didn't hear about the melatonin. Incidentally, that keeps me awake, but okay.
Yeah, there's some studies, researchers here actually in San Antonio that have been looking at that. So that's kind of some, maybe that hasn't hit the kind of mainstream and kind of maybe more anecdotal than anything else, but it's certainly, it doesn't hurt to, take those things. But sure. I think what I would want to kind of stress is that we have to remain vigilant. People, I don't want people to kind of freak out and have a lot of fear, right. But you just have to just continue the things that we were doing, just that same level of vigilance that most people wear kind of in March or April. We need to continue that through the summer and through these next couple of months until more people become vaccinated. We're kind of far away from what they talk about herd immunity, just because we haven't reached that level yet, and we probably won't reach that if we ever will. As some people say, we probably won't reach that until the next year or so. So this is a ongoing kind of process. New information is coming out every day, and hopefully more vaccines, and more people will be willing to take the vaccine. And that's kind of my whole thing. We won't be able to fight this kind of whole pandemic unless people become vaccinated.
And that's what we have to stress.
Yep.
Especially amongst, like I said, once again, all the melanated tone skin people. That's something that we need to stress amongst us. I think that we now need to make it part of your conversation. If you know what I mean, like when we converse with people, we talk about all the other things, but we never, ask them, how you doing, staying safe. We never bring those things up. I'm from Detroit, and my cousin, she sent me a text one Sunday, and she said, this is a friendship check, how are you doing? So I called her. I was supposed to text her back, but naturally I didn't. So I called her up. I'm like, what's up? She said, what's the text for? She said, I sent it to everybody on my phone. And I'm like, so that's nice, but why? She said, because a group she has in Detroit, and they've been doing it every Sunday. So every Sunday they text out, to different people as just a friendship check. She said, because with COVID, we don't know, and I was like, that's a good idea. Okay, that makes sense now, So I started doing it. And when I did it, someone called me, what's this for? I'm like, I told them. So it's a lot of us. It's kind of going around there, but I think those are things, not necessarily everybody got to do that, but I think it's a good thing to do, because a bunch of us, when we were texting this one person, we didn't realize so many of us were texting the one person, but we found that person had COVID. We're like, whoa, and, so we called each other. Did you know? Yeah, I got the text. So after we saw that, we found out something, about someone we didn't know, we realized that it's important now to go back and start reaching out to people just to, hey, how you doing? But we did the friendship text, and it's working.
Yeah, and you have to check on one another and make sure your network and people that are in your community, small space, are doing okay. There was actually it's called the U.S. COVID-19 Vulnerability Index, and this kind of breaks down the 20 most vulnerable cities in terms of their medical conditions, number of providers to patients, the prison population, access to care. It took all those things into account. Well, Detroit, Michigan was number 6. It was the number 6 most vulnerable city in terms of contracting COVID-19 and dying from it. Yeah. My hometown, Shreveport, was number 19. So, yeah, it's a big concern when communities such as mine and kind of your community, we're in a vulnerable space, and there should be some protocol systems in place where the most vulnerable people are getting the care that they need, being able to access the vaccinations and providers of color. Out of all of the providers in the U.S., less than 5% are African American. That's right. A huge problem.
That is. That really is. That's yeah. Yes, and that's because one, I don't think as parents and grandparents, we're not gearing our kids in that direction. Mm-hmm. We're gearing kids into other places, other things that we feel like they should have, and I won't say we, but we don't gear them. Luckily with me, my daughter's a nurse practitioner. My granddaughter's a nurse practitioner. Oh my gosh, she's a nurse. And well, all of my grandkids, they're following their aunt. Mm-hmm. And because she started grooming them all when she was a paramedic, she started grooming them. They could tell you everything about a paramedic's truck. I was like, wow, y'all smart, But I had no idea that when she was doing that they would all be following her there, Mm-hmm. So I think what we need to do as people is we need to gear our children, not necessarily you need to go be in the medical field, but we need to open their eyes and broaden their horizons from what they see every day, which is, jobs that they see every day, to let them know that that's a field, first of all, that's never going to go away. We need to I always tell kids, don't do a job or get a profession where a computer can take your job. And, people laughing. I'm like, no, for real, seriously, we're a computer world. Don't get a job where the computer can take your place. And I always say the medical field, computers cannot take your place. That's one place where the human element has to be.
Very true. And there was a study that came out that showed that there were more black men in medical school in 1978 than there were in 2014. So, that's a huge problem. That's one of my passions, is to try to increase the diversity in medicine. I talk about this in my book, Overcoming the Odds, and my documentary that's coming out next month, in terms of trying to get more black men, more minorities, women also, into the field of medicine, especially orthopedic surgery, where less than 1% are African American.
Oh, wow. Well, I'll need to contact you, because other than doing this radio show and my job, I'm the state education chair for Texas State NAACP. So I reach basically kind of everybody. So one day I might do a Zoom call and invite you on to talk to areas.
That would be excellent. I could bring on, have in a group of physicians who are African American, and cardiologists, a transplant surgeon, a plastic surgeon, a anesthesiologist. So I can bring on whoever you want me to, and happy to try to encourage more kind of minorities, African Americans, to go into my field, which it's much needed.
Yes, because I said it's those are things that we don't talk about when we talk to kids about going to school. Kids tend to go into fields that they see the most outside, that they see, and you don't see the doctors often. You know what I mean? You don't see doctors often or every day, or it's something you don't see. I like my daughter. If someone looks at her, she's in her 40s, but if you looked at her, you might card her and ask her to go back to school. But occasionally, she goes back to the high school she was with, that she was in, and she talks to the girls mostly about, medical field. And last time she went, she wears, on her off day, she got on jeans and a t-shirt. Okay, she does. But she went to the school, visited, the girls, and was talking to them about a medical field. So they all asked her, so what you doing? Because they judged her by her ponytail, her t-shirt, jeans, and shoes. They judged her that, by wearing that. So they asked her, so when you going to go? Why are you talking to us about going to medical field? What do you do? She said, I'm a nurse practitioner. And they stopped because they went, they said, well, why you dressed like that? She said, because this is who I am.
Yeah.
She did. But she began to answer their questions about how long did it take her, what's the shortcut, and her shortcut was being a paramedic first. She said that was a shortcut, but she also let them know about the importance of being a paramedic. But she talked to them, and after she talked to them, they had a different perspective because first of all, she didn't go in there with no suit on. She went in there looking just like they did.
Yep.
And so she fitted in with just how they were dressing, and they didn't think about the fact that she could do what she do, yet wearing some jeans, t-shirt, and asked her what kind of car she drove. She told them a Mustang. Well, they thought she was gonna say a Mercedes or something like that. She said Mustang. She said I have a motorcycle too, but she changed the mindset of some of them by just being her.
Yeah, representation is very important. You can't become something that you can't see. You have to be able to relate to someone. And I think if I would have saw someone who looked like me and talked like me, listened to a similar type of music genre, that would have changed the trajectory of my life. I got into a lot of trouble growing up.
Right.
My little brother went to prison. My little sister went to prison. My mom has battled a drug addiction my whole life, and she was actually shot, and she's paralyzed from her waist down due to her drug addiction. So I grew up in that type of environment, and just having a role model or someone who is an African American in a very prestigious specialty like mine, that would have changed the trajectory of my life kind of earlier on.
But but that's one thing I see in the. I'm always working with kids. I don't like working with adults because if they screw up their life, it's their fault. I had nothing to do with it. But I do wonder. I try to reach our kids because we have a chance to reshape them, to show them other things out there other than what they see in their little square and circle. We have a chance to change that. So I work with making sure that they hear that change, see that change, no matter what I got to do to get them there. I'll make sure that they either talk to somebody, see something that has something to do with what they think they want to be rather than what they're told they have to be.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, I need to reach out to you again because I'm going to do a show on mental health and our African American men because that's a huge problem right now, and we have to get I have to get men who look like the men to sit around and do a show like this, but to talk to our African American males about mental health because it's causing a big crisis, and we need to stop the crisis and stop feeding it because right now we're feeding the crisis. We need to stop feeding it so that it will suffocate and go away.
Yeah, that's a huge problem. I have friends that are psychiatrists, psychologists that are African American that would be happy to join me on that as well. I personally, as my family, I talk about some of those struggles with mental health and my family members, personal family members, kind of in my book, Overcoming the Odds. But happily, that's something that's not talked about a lot, especially in men. Right. And happy to have that conversation with you.
Good. Well, thank you. And I want to thank you for coming on the show and enlightening us. And like I said, I've talked to other doctors on the show, but I was always searching for one that looked like us. Because I'll say no one could talk to us like we do but us.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can. Anybody else can give us the overview, the big, huge overview, but we can actually say, hey, listen, this is how it really is, okay? And we actually get it. Because Vern Catron is the one who hooked me to you.
Okay. Yeah. My conversation, the way I approach my patients who are African American is a totally different approach. I can relate to them a lot easier. I understand kind of where they're coming from. And that matters. That makes a huge difference. So I'm happy to, at any point, talk to your audience about any healthcare related, things that you would like to be discussed. Happy to do that anytime.
And also, you said you have a Facebook page that people can ask you questions or whatever, or get information from. Do you?
Yeah, all of my social media accounts on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn are all Antonio Webb, MD. Okay. That's a Webb with 2 B's. And my website is overcomingtheoddsmovie.com as well as AntonioWebbMD.com.
All right, good. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have your contact information, and you will hear from me some more. Yes, definitely.
All right. I look forward to it.
Because we have to educate in order to grow.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, you take care, and thank you. And also,
you're welcome.
I want to thank everyone for listening to Community Connections this morning. I hope you did learn a lot. And if you have any questions, you know how you can get your answers. But I want you to always remember, you cannot live a positive life with a negative mind. We'll talk to you next Sunday. Bye now.